All right, Dianna Russini, our friend from ESPN, is here on the GetBeast.com Zoom line. A pleasure, as always, to have her presence on the podcast. Dianna, it was great to see you on Sunday in the very brief playoff appearance for the Tennessee Titans. But there's a lot going on here still in Tennessee. We got a lot to talk about today. I hope you're ready.
Yeah, it's always busy. Usually by now, everyone's on vacation. The postseason reports are all done. The summaries are all wrapped up, but Tennessee just keeps giving, which is why I love covering the Titans because they do always keep it interesting. Look, I'm always going to go with I'm shocked they even made it to the playoffs this season. So I think for fans, they should be thrilled with the roster they had, with the multiple hurdles that they had to overcome or at least get over. It was a really impressive season for a team that I didn't really think had that same magic that they had last year.
Oh yeah, I mean, you talk about going on vacation. My girlfriend is cursing me right now because she doesn't understand that the games are over. Why can't we take a long weekend or whatever? I'm like, no, there's free agency, there's draft, there's all sorts of stuff that I got to do, and unfortunately for the purposes of my home life, it's detrimental. But let's start there. Let's kind of flesh out what you just said about surprised that they even made it to the playoffs, because largely the conversation here, Dianna, was this year considered a failure? The expectations of a team who came into this season off an AFC championship game run, improbable though it may have been, surprising though it may have been, the moves that John Robinson made and the roster that Mike Vrabel and his staff went into the season with, here we thought that they should be capable of competing for, if not an AFC title game, again, a Super Bowl appearance. And then things fell the way that they did and kind of crumbled around them in a way that was clear and obvious to everyone. But you were surprised that they made it to the point that they did. Explain for the audience, if you would.
Well, looking from just that roster standpoint, we know John Robinson was committed to getting a pass rusher, right? So we know the Vic Beasley situation didn't work out. Jadeveon, it was heating up. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. It was getting better. He's still Jadeveon Clowney, but obviously an injury is going to put them behind. There's nothing that they can do about that. And then we go to the draft where we think, the Titans are going to beef up their offensive line. And, I'm not even sure how to describe what happened there with Isaiah Wilson. And apparently coach doesn't know how to describe it either, or at least he didn't want to in his, exit interview or exit press conference yesterday. So right there, all the issues that were going to be addressed fall to the wayside, and now you're left with the pieces of a team that just didn't have enough from my thought to really be successful. Then we had the COVID thing to start the season off and the schedule changes. So there was just a big mix, I think, of things. And I think they got lucky a lot of times when they were able to pull a lot of wins. A lot of really lucky things. I think there were some really good coaching moments too. There was some great, obviously, player production. But all in all, this team was different than they were last season. I think we even knew that coming into this year, it wasn't going to be the same. But for what this roster was, who these players are, I think they got the best out of them. I think everyone gets frustrated about this defense, and we hear it, we see it on Twitter. People ask me all the time, actually, what's the story with the defense? Why are they so bad? Get a defensive coordinator. And I think sometimes people confuse coaching with personnel.
Yes.
And you have to look at, and this is no knock on these players. These guys play hard, but we're not talking about an elite group here. We're talking about a very average defense. And the fact that they were actually pretty good against the Ravens is so commendable. But this had, in my opinion, I didn't think this had anything to do with Shane Bowen's calls or Mike Vrabel's. I think this had to do with just the guys that they have out there.
Wyatt Ray and Tuzar Skipper are not going to win you an AFC wildcard weekend, Dianna. It's just not going to happen. And listen, the onus ultimately falls for the personnel issues, because that's what we're discussing, falls at the feet of John Robinson, not just for a draft class that had negligible impact on the year. And maybe we'll spend a little time on Isaiah Wilson. That's a podcast unto itself, and I know you don't got all day. But you do the Clowney deal 10 times out of 10, again, not knowing that his body would fail him, in my opinion. Maybe you feel differently. If you do, push back on me. I'm happy to hear a rebuttal.
Here's what I'm going to push back on.
Please.
Because I was talking to other teams during his very long free agency.
Yes.
His knee issue was a concern for a lot of teams. So it just makes me wonder how much the Titans really looked into that. And you got to figure they know about it. They have a great medical staff, but also, we know Vrabel has experience with Clowney before, and he knows his injuries. He knows he's prone to them. You can't predict an injury, and to their defense, but I still think that was a gamble of a signing.
Okay, and that brings us back to the larger point, which does involve Isaiah Wilson and Jadeveon Clowney and Vic Beasley, because Mike said something yesterday in his last day of school press conference, talking about, wanting to focus on guys who love football. And I asked him a question at the end of the press conference about, did this year, not trying to give you guys the opportunity to provide yourself with excuses, but everything was different for every team around the league when it came to player evaluation because of the way that COVID just impacted the annual, the NFL yearly schedule, right? With free agency, with the draft, with the run up to it, everything. I mean, the combine was the last normal NFL event I feel like we had. That feels like 20 years ago when we're all in Indianapolis at Prime 47.
And probably all getting COVID.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%. That bar circuit around the Indiana Convention Center in the state of my youth, the state of my birth. It makes me very happy that once a year the NFL goes on spring break and they go to my college bar at Kilroy's. It warms my heart. It really does. But anyway.
That must be so weird, but awesome. Like when you, especially because you've been to Kilroy's and you look around and you see the faces of some big time coaches, GM owners. That must be strange to think like that's the same place where you used to go and like try to pick up chicks, right?
No, it makes me very happy because then I can tell them about the stuffed breadsticks that they have at Kilroy's and I'm the hero at the bar. It makes me very happy at 1:45 in the morning. Anyway, with the player evaluation process, they missed on Isaiah Wilson, undisputably. The issues, the laundry list, it looks more like a rap sheet than a checklist of things that he has gone through. Jadeveon Clowney, you mentioned people doing due diligence around the league on the injuries that he had, and knee injuries have been an issue for Jadeveon since he came into the NFL, ultimately what ended his season. Vic Beasley, I know you said it yourself on Twitter, complete, utter shock and surprise that they would even look at this guy. And Dianna, when they cut him in the middle of the season, John Robinson said to us, we had initially considered a multi-year deal. And the rest of us are sitting back in our chair like, what are you talking about? In what world? Hell, I'm not connected in Atlanta. I talk to other media people there maybe, but everybody with a Twitter account understood the problems, the clear and obvious issues with Vic Beasley. And so we come back to this evaluation process where they have missed on very, very important $21.75 million lit on fire on two guys who couldn't play for different reasons. And Isaiah Wilson, their first round draft pick, just being asked to GTFO from the team in the middle of the season while they're trying to get the AFC. It's crazy.
You don't see this happen a lot where an organization just is like, go away. Just go away. You're going to get us in trouble. You're going to get yourself in trouble. And I want to first say with the Isaiah Wilson, saga, whenever, or at least when I first started, I immediately went with there's something wrong, more serious. There's an issue here. This isn't just a guy that is, lacks discipline or doesn't want to play football. There's something wrong. And so I remember feeling sad actually for him.
Sure.
Because, a lot of people were crushing it and crushing him. And where is this guy? What's he doing? And I don't know, my instincts just told me that I bet you there's a bigger thing going on here, something else. But then it just continued. And And look, there could be something. I don't know. I never really dug on it to find out if there's a problem here.
Yeah.
But obviously, the transition from college to the NFL is not good. And you go back to the draft process there after the combine. This isn't a guy who sat in a room with John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. They Zoomed with him, and they made this decision off of Zoom. And we do these all the time for a living now. They're not the most personal things. I mean, that's fine. Like, I feel like you and I get along on Zoom. We get along a lot better in person, though. And there's a lot more authentic energy and body language that you can read. Just things that I've heard GMs and coaches in the past talk to me about when they're talking to a guy, when they're looking in his eye. So you have to wonder, back to your point, that, the question that you brought up in the press conference on Monday, maybe that hurt them a little. Maybe they didn't get that man-to-man, face-to-face opportunity to see if maybe he wasn't the right guy. The Vic Beasley thing, the multi-year deal thing is just comical. All you got to do is Google Vic Beasley, and it's like the first story that comes up is that the Falcons had to have coaches sit with him to try to help him understand if he wanted to play the game anymore. He lost his passion. It just didn't take much, which is why I was so surprised they signed him, knowing that the culture, which I think is tremendous. That's like the one part of when I think of the Tennessee Titans, they have a culture that's built there. You talk to every player and they all use the same language, phrases, words, which to me, that's always a sign that it's coming from the leaders and it's trickling down. The greatest organizations I cover have that type of style, and I see it in Tennessee. So to have a guy that wasn't sure if he even liked football, which we've all been through our own, I'm sure, challenges in life where you're not sure what you want to do anymore. That just seemed like a red flag. But they were desperate and they needed a player. And it just didn't work out. And unfortunately, the storyline in the last game was the pass rush actually got a little bit better. Go figure.
5 sacks.
It was the only time. 5 sacks. Where did that come from?
I couldn't believe what I was watching. Good for them, and now they're at home on the couch with the rest of us. And I'm disappointed as a result because I loved covering the playoffs last year. It's a rare enough thing here in Tennessee,
awesome.
Dianna. It doesn't happen every day. But anyway, so now we head into the offseason, free agency. You lit a fire, set a bomb off in my Twitter mentions. It's just so disrespectful what you did. I consider us to be friends. Even though most of our interactions have been on Zooms, I'm a huge Dianna Russini fan, except for yesterday, because you quote tweeted another friend of the podcast, Mina Kimes, in response to, I believe Mina had said, who was the team that Mina had linked?
It was Allen Robinson saying that he's open to looking at everything that's on the table, essentially, for his free agency, in which she quote tweeted, "Hey Ravens." And so I quote tweeted that and said, "Hey Titans."
Yes. And then immediately my DMs flooded. My mentions just became a cesspool. And honestly, it's a conversation worth having because Corey Davis is out of here. Corey Davis, he was tremendous throughout the course of the regular season in the last 3 games for a variety of different reasons. And you can make excuses for any players, but I think he's just not as good at professional football as Jair Alexander is at playing corner for the Green Bay Packers. Shut him down. 5 catches, 13 yards in the last 3 games of a season in a contract year for him. The death of his brother throughout the course of the season, the birthday of his brother being on the day that they played the Houston Texans, and the drops that resulted. He had the crucial 3rd down catch to keep the chains moving, set up Tannehill and A.J. Brown for that 52-yard completion that got the thick kicker 2 C's. I love Sam Sloman for being able to hit that field goal at the end, but, bad game for him. The one catch, though, maybe mitigated. And then Sunday, he gets 2 targets, no receptions, and he finishes the game when they're driving down 4 on the sideline with an injury. Corey Davis's market is going to be complicated by everything that COVID is going to do, the salary cap this year. But for my money, Dianna, I don't know if they can spend that kind of money on a wide receiver. Give me Allen Robinson every time over Corey Davis. I just don't think it's feasible with the financial implications.
Yeah, they would definitely have to get creative, make moves, redo deals. if they'd want to make that. But the only reason why I threw that out there, that was actually from a conversation that I was having with some Titans people back last season. That's
Okay.
where that really came from, where the person I was talking to, they don't have a very high position, but they have they have some influence with the Titans organization, had told me they love Allen Robinson. And so I just kind of always kept that in the back of my mind. And I think they're crazy if they don't go after him. I think they'll try. I think Allen Robinson's going to get a gigantic deal, though, and he's looking to get paid.
He should be compensated on the back end for his suffering in Chicago. God bless that.
And
man.
the thing is, he would fit so well. I had a really unusual situation last season. I was flying home from Chicago after a game back to New Jersey, and the Bears had won, and they gave the players the next 2 days off. And Allen was flying back to Jersey to see his family, and he sat next to me, and we talked the whole flight. And I wish I could say that I got all the scoop about him. He was obsessed with learning about being a broadcaster.
Really?
Obsessed. Like, wants to go into TV, wants to do stuff in Chicago. Like, he was so passionate about it. But we also, we did have a little conversation about, playing at Penn State and, the type of team he wants to be part of. And I think even last year he knew it was time. It was time. But just from talking to him and what's a 2-hour conversation, but it was enough for me to think, now that I cover the Titans so much, like, gosh, this guy would be awesome with this team. Like, he's just a good dude, and I think he'd fit. But like you said, can they make it work financially? Because he's going to be breaking the bank.
Well, 20 unrestricted free agents here, several offensive key pieces, Jonnu Smith, Corey Davis, as we mentioned. On the defensive side of the ball, you have Jayon Brown, Daquan Jones, the nose tackle, and a variety of different role players on this team. But then you have the thing that I feel like we have talked about all year long because of the pandemic, but I don't know that it's necessarily clicked with fans just how much of a veteran salary cap casualty bloodbath this offseason is going to be. And I look at specifically guys like Kenny Vaccaro here in Nashville, Adam Humphries, who unfortunately has dealt with severe concussion issues that ended his season in a way that is hugely troublesome. And of course, you hope that he is okay and he is able to rebound. But ultimately, the business of the NFL is cold that way. And if the guy can't play, he's making too much money, and you're looking to cut costs, that's one of the first places that you look. How much do you think that's going to impact the way that GMs make financial decisions, GMs and their salary cap experts that they work with in conjunction? Just how bad do you think it's going to be this offseason for the vets?
Yeah, I think that's actually going to be their biggest issue. I think going into the offseason, as much as it's going to be whatever, we'll get to all the free agent stuff, the draft things that they're going to be looking for, but finding a way to make the money work and give them enough fluidity to get players and bring back the players they want. As you were talking, I was just thinking, I remember last offseason, with them moving on from Logan Ryan and Jack Conklin. And, I thought it was smart. I thought it was a really good way to save. I know fans were not happy about it. Hell, we know Logan Ryan wasn't happy about it.
No.
He wanted to stay. But that was a really smart, those were smart decisions. As much as I think we like to crush John Robinson, I think that was a good move. But yeah, no, going back to this year, I think, every team is facing this. They're all going to be dealing with the same issue here. But this team has got to figure out a way to get players. And, Vrabel said it in the exit interview, the Titans are going to look a lot different from the player standpoint, from the coaching standpoint, from the front office, which I thought that was really powerful when he said that. I was surprised he went as hard on that as he did. And maybe you heard it differently. It just seemed like, wow, all right, they're going to be making significant changes here.
Well, I think it hit me a little less hard just because of the way at the combine John Robinson handled the same kind of question about guys like Logan Ryan. And at that point, we did not know that it meant Jurrell Casey being shipped off for parts.
Yeah, I
But
forgot about that.
it did mean Jurrell Casey getting traded for a 7th round pick, because John was very clear and obvious in not so much to say as he was letting people know, yeah, we're going to trade Jurrell Casey, but just very adamant in the idea that, yeah, this is not going to be the same football team that we're going to bring back. We're going to do the things that we think can help us with the continuity to replicate or try and replicate the success that they had during that AFC Championship game appearance. But they were very, very blunt with anybody who was listening to them. You just had to pay attention to the words that were being used. It's easy to gloss over those kind of things, I think, in press conferences, because, you know, how closely are fans parsing the words. But those things matter. And I think it should prepare people for very, very stark changes that are going to be made going back to last season. So I did notice it. I don't think it hit me quite as hard as John did last year, because of what John had said and then what they ended up doing with the roster as a result.
Yeah, the Jurrell Casey thing was definitely shocking last year, but like you said, when you put the pieces together, it was like, oh, actually, that kind of made a lot of sense. It was just really who Jurrell Casey was and what he represented, and being such a big part of that team. And you know, Buck, it actually makes me think about one of the pieces that I think the Titans are still missing, which is really strong leadership on the player side. I haven't, like, I think these guys they mesh really well. And unfortunately, I have not been in that locker room. I haven't been around them this year because of COVID. I only see them on the field. But just that accountability type leadership that, you know, when I cover the Saints a lot, when guys make mistakes, when guys aren't doing things, you see a guy like Cam Jordan go up to his guys and get in their faces and sort of have that standard. New England was like that for years. Not so much this past season. I don't think they had, well, they actually still have a lot of leaders, but not the way it used to be. I mean, obviously we saw Brady, how many, you know, we used to see him go at everybody. I just think that could be something, and I don't know if this is something the team feels they need, but I just always thought from an outsider of like, who is that guy on this team? Who is the guy that's kind of represents the Titan way, that is going to hold these guys accountable and really start to build something that could be awesome there?
Well, I'll give you the two who it was, and you're spot on, because Kevin Byard talked about this yesterday, and people kind of look at Kevin Byard, who has been very much a very good player. He had a down year this year, and they all had a down year as a result defensively. But he kind of said this in his end of year comments. You know, I want to take greater strides to be that presence, but it was on the defensive side of the ball, Jurrell Casey, and then in a way that I think was bigger even than Jurrell for as long a tenure as he had here. It's Delaney Walker. Delaney Walker used to call dudes out, not by name, but just kind of as, you know, as an offense as a whole. Like, I'm paraphrasing here, but would say when they're playing soft, when would vocalize, you know, when he thought they were being front runners, when they were not living up to the expectation that Delaney Walker held himself at, and that the Titans as an organization, well, I think that guy is Mike, but Mike is very, very public about saying, you know, the locker room is not my space. The locker room is not my place to be.
You can't have the coach be that person. They can be strong, and, you know, he obviously is respected and the guys love him. And even when he was a player, he was that guy when he was a player. He's no Teddy Bruschi tells me all these stories about what he was like.
Oh God, I can't imagine. Young Mike Vrabel's probably.
But the part that they always talk about, and I know you cover this team so well, you know the stories about, just forget the fact that, you know, he has a presence about him and isn't scared to have confrontation, but there's an intelligence there that is impressive, which is, you know, I've heard stories of him going at Belichick in meetings and not backing down, and Belichick adjusting what they were doing because of what Vrabel pointed out. So, you know, Teddy always said that, like, there was always a respect for him, because he always, you know, what he wanted everyone else to do, Mike was doing himself, you know, so it's not like he was, you know, preaching and not being able to back it up. So, you know, I'm sure I'm sure he's searching for that guy on his team now. Who's going to be the Teddy Bruschi on his team? Who's going to be the Mike Vrabel? And it can't be the head coach for sure. Definitely can't.
I think AJ Brown and Jeffrey Simmons, respectively, have that potential. I think we saw Jeff this year kind of step in. I mean, he breaks down the huddle. I know that's a small thing, but he is the person that they rally around. He is probably the most. I mean, in a way that, like, we miss from a local media perspective, we miss Logan Ryan, we miss Jarrell Casey, we miss Wesley Woodyard, we miss Delaney Walker, because those were the guys that you could go to when you need an open and honest moment about what exactly is happening with the team. And Simmons, AJ, to a lesser degree, I don't think he's as comfortable with us yet. And Zoom makes all of these things uncomfortable because you can't see our faces and we're just boxes yammering at you, oftentimes with echoes or with connections that make us sound like we're coming in from Mars. It's terrible. But Jeff has kind of started that. So I think your point is well made about that needing to be or a part that was lacking this year in a time when they needed accountability, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, or somebody to hold them to account. Nobody's asking them to take each other out in the media, but I do think that it can help kind of get people to notice a little more when your public comments and the things that are being written about are not necessarily indictments of your teammates, but just kind of like, hey, wake up,
Yeah. And I mean, and not even going through the media. I mean, just going up to each, just making it an issue, holding your teammates to a really high standard. I'm not saying go pull a JJ Watt and tell the media about all that. God,
Diana, I asked Tannehill about that the week before they played Houston. He wanted no part of it. It almost sounded like a shot. He was like, yeah, I don't do things that way. But he wanted no part of that.
It was weird because the media really embraced that. They were like, this is amazing.
Because it was for us. It wasn't for the team. It was for us.
It's so true. We're so selfish. We're just like, if you give us access, we love you. Tell us something, please. And we're so pathetic.
Well, and it is, this is and we'll do a little inside baseball. I don't want to keep you too long, but people do enjoy the inside baseball stuff. And there were some comments made here in the local media that I think are worth talking about before we get you out of here. But I do think that it is kind of a balance in new media is probably the wrong word for it, but just kind of how little these guys need us as much as they used to anymore. And the way that, as a result, some of us, and it's not, it's not to name names or not to call people out, but you do kind of adjust the way that you perceive or that you consume these things, because it is something to have for people in the media to use and to distribute to the public and make us feel, not make us feel better. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm saying it poorly.
Yeah, I think fans and media, we want a coach that gives a press conference and they're nice and they're courteous and they're personable, and we want to feel respected. But that's just not how it works. That's not how it goes. And one of the things I've always noticed when I've covered the Titans and the press conferences that I've been able to attend, there's a lot of confrontation and a lot of baiting, which I'm not sure if that's to get sound bites or to get headlines. I've done it myself. I've done it most of my career. I know sometimes you got to just ask the question to get the response. I did it to Mike on Sunday.
Yep.
But I think what happens sometimes is reporters, we get frustrated when we're not getting the answers we want, when it's boring. And Mike Vrabel reads from the book of boring. He is a really boring listen, but boring is good for the organization. Yeah. And that's why I've always respected the way he conducts himself, because he's not doing anything. Everything he's doing is in the good for the team. It's always about the team for him. So while we hate that he won't give us injury updates, while we hate that he won't address the Isaiah Wilson thing the way he needed to and earlier, and the Clowney stuff when that was floating around, like, he just avoids. But in his mind, I'm sure I don't need to tell you. I don't have to do anything. So, when I've seen, local reporters talking about how he's got a bad attitude, I enjoy covering the Titans. I enjoy covering Mike Vrabel. I always have. He and I we've had spats before. I've had it with every head coach. They're not always going to like what you say, but I think if you show that you know what you're talking about, you respect them, you got to just hope that that respect comes back at you. Try covering other teams. That's always like my thought whenever I hear people concerned that, oh, this coach is this. Oh gosh, there's some tough coaches out there. A lot tougher than Mike Vrabel.
Well, and maybe not physically, which is what you asked him on Sunday, which was tremendous.
Buck, I'm so glad that we talked. So, I don't mind talking about it. The game is on our air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a big deal. And my last interaction with Mike, I wouldn't say it was great. It was just like we had some conflict about something I reported. It was a while before this interview. So I remember thinking when I put the request in, like, this is going to get denied. This is definitely going to get denied. So when they said it's okay, I can interview him only because it's on our air, which is probably why he had to do it. Oh. I was just thinking as he was talking, I got to ask him about this fight thing. I got it because it's all anyone talks about. Like, as exciting as this game is, and then you got to weigh this professionalism with this sort of new age way of doing things and finding ways to humanize people.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I'm going for it. I'm doing it. He's going to bite my head off, but I'm going to go for it. And he was great. He was great, which is like those
Dianna,
things
this incredibly, I can't, I mean, it's a shit-eating grin that he had on his face. Like the way that he responded when you asked him the question, and then, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the exact quote in front of me. We'll put it in the podcast after the fact for people, but just to say, if I thought it would help my team win games, to fight every other head coach, I'd fight every other head coach. But it's about the players and on and on. And he got back to it.
Did you see the inside the NFL clip of it?
No, I haven't yet. I have not
so there's
yet.
A clip out there. He went up to John Harbaugh to say hello to him, and they were talking. And John says, "Can you believe this? All this talk about us fighting." And Greg goes, "Yeah, I was just asked about it actually." And I said, "If me winning meant like beating up every coach, I do it." And he's like, "Yeah, I mean," and John goes, "Yeah, I mean, like the guy's 6'5". Do they think I'm actually going to be able to beat him up?" So they had like a whole conversation about it too. So it's just like, it just goes to show you, like, sometimes you got to take those chances and ask it. I did it with Mike Tomlin 2 years ago. It was week 14. Le'Veon Bell still hadn't shown up. I had Mike pregame, and I asked very easy fluff questions. And it was the same feeling I had with Vrabel on Sunday. I was like, I have to ask this question. I have to. And I said, Le'Veon Bell still isn't here. What is your message to him? Right? Which at this point, Tomlin never commented on it in press conferences.
Right.
He would go no comment. And he just broke. He goes, well, my message to him would be, we want volunteers, not hostages on the Pittsburgh Steelers team.
That was such a good quote.
Died. I was like, did he just say that?
Just like an internal fist pump because you got so
Mike
good.
Tomlin didn't talk to me for a year. Like a full calendar year.
Oh God. But
now we're good.
No, but you did your job. And so this is a long way of circling back to, so Corey Curtis is a friend of mine. He works for Channel 2 here. He's a regular guest co-host on the podcast. I love Corey. But what he did yesterday was talk about Mike Vrabel's bad attitude in a way that went maybe not viral, but locally viral. And again, we'll put the clip in for people after the fact, but what kind of boils down to is you have the perspective of covering many, many football teams across the National Football League. And we, at least for me, this is the only team that I've covered. So I only have that as a frame of reference. Malarkey's last year was my first year out of college. So I wasn't asking anybody anything. I was terrified of doing my job at that point. But then Mike Vrabel is somebody who I'm honestly grateful that we get to have the way that Mike the way that he is, even if sometimes he's sedated on a Tuesday in week 8 or whatever. Like, I understand that, one, it doesn't benefit him to say anything to us that doesn't help his team win football games, which is something that he is casually started to evolve into now 3 years into the job. But what Corey did yesterday was take a shot at Mike in a way that didn't make sense to me, because it was at a point in time when we won't see Mike for, I mean, virtually, physically, or otherwise, probably until whatever the NFL combine looks like and the availability that they have to give to us. And so my larger issue with something like that, and I talked to Corey about this, is that where was this when the defense sucked and Mike Vrabel is saying that it's not on the part of the coaching, which, turns out it wasn't. It was a personnel issue, but these are conversations for a different day. But where was this when there is the opportunity for pushback from the head coach, not on the last day of school when we're all walking out the door and you're not going to have to see this dude for a couple months? That's why I think there was such a big pushback on what Corey Curtis said.
Yeah, there's an old journalism rule too. This is like real old school way of looking at it. But if you write for a newspaper and you write a crushing article about a team, no matter what it is, you show up the next day to that locker room. You show up. It's just what you do. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So to comment on his attitude, which he makes some good points. Mike's not flowery. But this is someone who played in the NFL. He's got 3 Super Bowl rings. He was a college All-American. Like, this person knows about football. Yep. He knows what he's doing. And just to give it more perspective, there's always a real shocking firing in the NFL, right? There's always a coach that we didn't see coming.
Peterson this year.
Peterson,
maybe some people saw coming.
No, yeah, you're right. There's a little bit, but as of last week, from the people I was talking to, he was safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, Peterson's a good call, but there's always one a year where it kind of comes out of nowhere. And so just in case, I never in a million years thought Mike Vrabel would get fired. Yeah. When I started to talk to some big time coaches agents, I was digging on it. Have you heard anything about Mike Vrabel perhaps getting fired? And 2 guys I talked to, the laughs I got from one, and the other goes, do you know that guy would have a job before he even told his family he was fired?
1,000%.
And I think what happens sometimes is when you have something in front of you, and you're picking at it because you want it to be perfect, and it's not perfect yet. And it may never be perfect, but the things that are the most important when it comes to a head coach, he has it. Yeah. Mike Vrabel is going to be a really successful head coach no matter where he is, because he has the personality, the knowledge, the respect, the commitment, the discipline, all the things that come with it. So I think sometimes the media and the fans need to maybe recognize what they could be dealing with instead of feeling maybe being a little spoiled with what they have.
Yeah. What other head coach is going to interact with us in the Zoom chat while we're asking questions and rip up on us?
It's amazing.
Not one of them. Not one. Like, I talked to our friend Mike Giardi about this, and he maintains that the Titans media core and the interaction that we have with Vrabel as a result is one of the best, because it's lax. It's, even if the questions are and the responses are sometimes mundane, as they are throughout the course of a regular season, it's a slog. But it's just it's a unique dynamic that I appreciate.
It is unique. It took me a minute to learn it, by the way, because when I started covering the Titans like 2 years ago, and I went to a press conference in person, I was like, what is this? What is happening? Who is Teresa? Why does she get the first question?
The GOAT.
And why is Paul screaming? Like, what is happening? and now there's just a vibe to it. And I love that group. It's just, I think everyone needs to stop being so sensitive.
Well, Corey hit him with the Stugats, win more games, win more games. He says it's just 11-5, 3-time Super Bowl champion. What are you talking about? Win more games. That's, anyway, you've been far too generous with your time. I'm going to get you the hell out of here on this one. You live in New Jersey. I know you don't cover losing football teams, but you're right by the Giants and the Jets. The Jets specifically. Art Smith, future Jets head coach.
Oh, I'm feeling it.
Are you really?
I am. I heard the interview went very well.
Okay.
I know they like him. We'll just see if it pans out. I will be surprised if Arthur Smith does not have a head coaching job. Put it that way. I think the Titans know. I think Ryan Tannehill knew. I think everyone kind of gets it. Like, there's going to be a new offensive coordinator in town, and that's going to be interesting. They're going to promote within. They're going to go try to find a guy. We'll see when it happens. As Mike Vrabel says, let's wait to see if Arthur gets a job first. before we talk.
Somebody asked him, do you have a timeline for when Arthur Smith is going to get hired? And he just looked at him like, do I have a timeline on when an NFL owner is going to hire my offensive coordinator? No, I do not have that timeline. People are going to be pissed when Shane Bowen's the defensive coordinator next year. And I think Todd Downing, the tight ends coach, has as good a shot as anybody.
I agree.
Given previous experience. Dianna Russini, ESPN. You can see her on Get Up. You can see her all across their platforms. At Dianna ESPN is where you can follow her on the socials. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today on the pod. It's always fun to catch up, and we won't see each other for a while, but it's always fun when we get to.
I know it's going to be a while, but I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on again. I love the show.